finally here.
We're here
Today's the day
to discuss
your favourite.
crime. I love crime.
We love crime.
Yes.
We love committing it. We love watching it. We love
Mostly watching it.
getting away with it.
I don't know what she's up to. I'm being a good boy and just living vicariously through the criminals.
So as of, November 2022, these are the top 10 crime films of all time.
According to us.
According to us. Little
Yes.
asterisk.
Yes.
And the way we did it, similar to last time, we each had our own lists, and then we compiled it into one
Consensus
universal
list that
top
we
10
can both live with.
Which, yes, because I think a lot of this also had to do with what is a crime film.
See, it's tough because the genre itself has, so many subgenres within them that could make lists all of them themselves.
Yes.
Like heist movies, one thing, cops versus robbers type thing, gangsters specifically, murder mystery, thrillers. So it kind of was especially tough, at least for me, because every time I added a film on the list, I was like, yeah, but that could exist in its own list entirely.
Which eventually we will end up doing heist films and murder mysteries. Yeah. And this isn't, I'd say, this is very different to fantasy, where like a fantasy film's a fantasy film.
Yeah, a fantasy film, there's dragon in it.
Exactly. It's magic and dragons. But it's definitely not as expansive as this list. So there was a lot of work that went into the qualifying.
There was a lot of frustration over how indecisive I was coming up with 10 that I wanted to put on the list.
10. Well, not even, because some of them were going to be mine.
Yes, and then of course I was like poo-pooing a lot of yours.
You poo-pooed so many of mine.
I did.
I'm going to go through some that we had like proper arguments over. One was like, spoiler alert, it's not in it, but American History X was a big one we argued about. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, I mean, American History X, I guess... you know what? I don't want to make any enemies on the internet. We'll move on.
Okay. You know what? That's a good place. Let's get started. Yeah. So, with that, we have our number 10. Some people are going to be really mad that
a lot of people are going to be very mad.
So low. At least it's on the list.
Which I was a big proponent. It had to be there.
I personally find it overrated, but I still like it. Pulp Fiction. Quentin Tarantino. Some consider to be best film.
I do.
That's wrong. But it is quite iconic, I think we can all say. There's obviously the twist, there's the whole...
Multiple?
I mean the physical twist.
Oh, right.
The dance.
Yeah. Right.
But also, yes, there are multiple story twists as well. But, it's like stupid but in like, the characters are quite stupid, and like, some of the characters are quite stupid. Bruce Willis is quite stupid, and it has the iconic EpiPen scene as well as someone with allergies.
Shot.
Adrenaline shot scene, which is very Tarantino. It's very Tarantino in the 90s, and it's just, I think it is also to that point extremely 90s.
Okay, I think, I don't know if on these lists, I think we should try and have a united front, but I think my perspective on Pulp Fiction is a little different. Yeah. I'm far more in just the traditional love reputation that this film has. The script, I think, is like just unbelievable, down to the structure, down to the plotting, down to the dialogue. I think it's like probably one of the best scripts ever written, in my opinion. And I would say that the thing that is most genius to me is it's almost like an anti-movie. Like, where things in normal films happen, we're seeing the opposite in Pulp Fiction. Instead of seeing the actual murder that the hitmen go to do, you see a 20-minute sequence of them driving to the murder, discussing burgers and taunting them for ages, and the camera cuts away before when the murder happens. You don't see the boxing match where Butch kills the opponent. You see the lead up to it and the aftermath, and you don't. It's like it's an anti-film. Right, and it's making very compelling characters and compelling drama, and also in some cases incredibly funny scenarios out of the opposite of what you see from every other film that shows these exact moments. And that's part of the genius of Pulp Fiction to me.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Anyway, moving on to our number 9.
Which was one that was on your list.
Yes.
So Steven Spielberg's Catch Me If You Can. I really enjoy Catch Me If You Can. I think it is, probably one of the more enjoyable con man kind of cat and mouse sort of movies, which obviously lands it into this genre. I think the reason why it didn't make it onto my list initially was I do think it's a bit too long. I think there's a lot that you could cut out because it starts to get a bit repetitive for me. But that being said, I do love this movie.
It's amazing. Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks' entire dynamic. Yes, it's a long film, but oh my gosh, it really keeps you captivated for at least a lot of it. Like, it's just such an interesting story about Frank Abagnale Jr. and how
it's
cons
a bit loose
his way.
in terms of the historical
I don't give a
accuracy.
shit. Like, I'm not watching it to be accurate. I'm watching it because it's a really interesting story. It's like, the way it tells it, the way he figures all the little stuff out with the checks. Which, by the way, it is also the conning of a time because you could not do any of it that way nowadays. But anyway, great film.
It is a good film.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, number 8. Another one that was on my list, which is Knives Out.
Yes.
Did you forget that this was on the list?
No.
So, Knives Out, directed and written by Rian Johnson, starring Daniel Craig and Jamie Lee Curtis and Ana de Armas and Chris Evans, and I could go on. And wow, what a surprise this one was. I just love that this was completely original. Like, yes, it's the format we've seen before, but it's not based on anything. It just came out of Rian Johnson's head. And I think we were talking about it the other day, but in your case, you didn't, it got you with its twisty twist.
Yeah, no, it's kind of an interesting thing because for context, I think that, the film starts very traditionally of like, going through people's stories and sort of like, who done it, and then 30 minutes in we see who done it, and then the movie shifts, for me at least, shifts genres into not being a who done it but who gone catcher. So I wasn't looking for any more clues of who done it because I was very convinced. So when it turned out it's actually it was Chris Evans. It was Chris Evans. I was shocked. I was like, oh, now we're back. We're back in the who done it. So when you were saying to me that you were still looking for the clues.
I was pretty certain going in. Like, even afterwards, I'm like, Chris Evans probably did it.
That's interesting because if I had felt that, I would have thought this movie failed.
And I mean, I wasn't like immediately when Ana de Armas is apparently the killer, I wasn't like, oh, it's obviously Chris Evans. Like, for me, it was like, oh, well, then it's obviously not her. I think you have to have the monologue at the end where the detective unveils everything. So you have to have something to unveil. But with that, we should move on to our number 7 pick.
No Country for Old Men, which is probably one of the few cases where the Best Picture winner was probably the best film of the year that it came out. In terms of its place in the crime genre, the way this film's genre has been defined has been discussed endlessly since it came out. It's actually like, what even is it? Is it a film noir? Is it a cat and mouse? Is it a dark comedy? Is it a horror? It's been poured over.
You know what it is? What? It's a film that's always bloody studied in film class.
This is why!
I saw that
This is why!
Stupid gas station clip, I think like 8 times in my uni days. They keep every film class. It's the perfect representation. I know. I know it's a brilliant piece of tension. I understand that. But when you literally have to study it 8 times.
That character played by Javier Bardem is one of the greatest villains committed to film of all time.
Who won that year?
He did.
Did he?
For the best supporting actor.
Oh, I was getting confused with Skyfall. Yeah, he did win.
Yeah, no, he did win. Right. But the thing as well about No Country for Old Men is I can see if that film came out today, it would still be one of the best movies ever made. It would still be...
But you don't think it would get the same
It would get the same acclaim from critics.
Yeah, but not from people.
Not from people, because people are too conditioned now to expect a film to tie everything up in a nice little bow and not intentionally deflate. First time I watched it, and I did see it at the time, and I was way too young to understand it, I remember thinking, what the fuck? But as I've grown older, it just gets better.
Yeah, that makes sense. But we should get into it. Number 6, we recently spoke about this film. The Departed, which is, I mean, we have an entire video about it.
I should really just link it.
I'm going to link it right here, right wherever on the top left. You can click on it and then come back here. But it is, we've already said so much about it, but it is honestly a pretty perfect film. Yes.
Yeah,
The Departed.
I think, look, I've said all I need to say about The Departed in life. On our videos, it's fine. I don't need to go into
fine.
that.
It's a fine movie. It's all right.
No,
you know what?
I love it.
It's fine. Now you got it on camera. Rob says it's fine.
It's brilliant. Okay.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. What is number 5, Rob?
Number 5 is Promising Young Woman.
Yes.
Which is an excellent movie.
Yes.
Emerald Fennell is giving us something very, very new.
Camilla in the Crown, by the way.
Yes,
in the
exactly.
last season.
Yes. So I think that it doesn't put a foot wrong in terms of script, characterization, the very relevant themes that it brings up.
I mean, this could be controversial, but Carey Mulligan should have won Best Actress. It really gives you a bit of it's the only movie where the main character dies, but you love how it ends.
Yeah, no, well, in terms of that, it's like...
It's not the only movie, but it's one of the few where it's still a happy ending.
Yeah. Like, the thing that I love is when you see Emerald Fennell talk about the movie, she says, you look at all the scenarios and all the things that happen in this film that are pretty horrific and harrowing, but these are all things we've seen in movies many times, all played for laughs. Yeah. And she got so sick of that. Yeah. And she wanted to really highlight these are not funny scenarios.
Yes.
These are not things to be taken lightly.
But with that, we should move on to our number 4, another from my list, another possibly my favorite director working right now, which is Sicario. This made me realize who Denis Villeneuve was. You know what I mean? I really liked Prisoners, but then this movie is the one where I was like, whoa, who is this person? And then Roger Deakins just... snaps for Roger Deakins.
Roger Deakins, he does.
But again, it made me want to know who it was because this movie is amazing. I think you want to talk about brilliant moments of tension. I think this has a few, but particularly that moment at the crossing where it's you got the cars and and the way the camera work is, and then on the flip side of that, when they go under with in the caves or whatever in the underpass. I've never felt more tension.
I do agree. Denis Villeneuve is probably the best director working today. I've loved every film that he's made. Yep. This is probably my least favorite of his movies, if I'm going to be honest. Okay, it's above Enemy. So, at least for my personal ranking, I wouldn't have included Sicario on the list.
Can you stop shooting down all the ones that are mine? I haven't been shooting down yours.
You shut down Pulp Fiction of it.
One. And you've shut down every single one of mine. This is some bullshit.
I agreed to these.
Wait for me.
Here.
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing is that I think No Country for Old Men for me already kind of has what I appreciate of that style of crime film there. You are right. It is unbelievable levels of tension and also incredibly heartbreaking. And I think it's you come away from it and you just sort of don't know what to do with yourself. Yeah.
Okay. Top 3. Now this one is obviously from your list, so please go ahead.
Well, to be fair, all 3 of the top 3 are 3 of my favorite movies of all time. Yeah. So well done.
Did you say well done for me?
Because you picked one of them.
I did pick one of them.
Yes, you did.
Yes, I did.
Yes, you
You're
did.
so happy about it. Oh, that's right, because you completely forgot it existed.
Well, it's because, again, I was thinking about, we'll get to it, but I was thinking about it belonging in its own list. So I was like, oh yeah, it is a crime movie.
Crime does happen.
Number 3 is Goodfellas, which, I mean, I don't think it's controversial of me to say it is Scorsese's best film, making it one of the best films ever made. But Goodfellas is like nothing else in the crime genre. It's pretty much defined the genre since it came out and has even defined cinema in a way. Because all the elements in Goodfellas, we've seen those elements before. We've never seen the cocktail mixed in that way. The whole thing about Goodfellas is that you're seeing basically the template for bad behavior in film that was created by Scorsese. The idea that you're seeing pretty much just the lives of these horrendous people you're getting invested in and
kind
enjoying.
Of was like,
Yeah.
I do enjoy making this film.
Yeah, no,
I'll make it 8 more times.
Yeah. No, but the whole thing is that you're enjoying seeing these people's lives and living vicariously through them because, they are having so much fun. And it's being very honest in that depiction. But at the same time, you're kept at arm's length enough that you can pass judgment on them.
We've talked about this a lot, but it's kind of been the film where people might take maybe not the best message from it.
Yeah, like it's that. I think just because people are dumb, the film knows what it's doing and it does it well. But because it is so high energy and exciting and enveloping, and just pure cinema, it really is. It's pure cinema.
Poetic cinema.
People will take the wrong message from it because they'll come out of being like, "Oh, that pistol whipping scene was cool."
Yeah.
In fact, it's horrifying. But,
and of course it has one of the most famous cooking scenes of all time.
And also like one of the most famous also tension-building scenes, but one that is released with, intense comedy. How Am I Funny scene.
Which is a very like Scorsese thing, I feel.
Yeah.
Speaking in tension, speaking of one of the best possible representations or just films that have tension in it, I'm of course speaking about Silence of the Lambs.
Yes. Never do that again. I think you've hit the nail on the head. Silence of the Lambs is
iconic.
It's beyond iconic.
Yeah.
It is perfect. It's flawless in its direction, its editing, its performance, its screenplay.
Which, let's speak about that. Like, I think everybody knows that Anthony Hopkins is Hannibal in this movie, but if you haven't seen it, you might think he's much more of a he's in the film much more than he actually is. He's not in it a lot.
He's only at 16 minutes of screen time.
16 minutes of screen time in what is like at least a 2-hour movie. And you wouldn't think so because he is present throughout that entire film. But let's also not mention Jodie Foster, who is brilliant in this film.
I think one of the best performances of all time. Both of them, honestly.
Yeah. And it's because, again, and I actually like it a lot because neither of them I would even say are that showy of a performance. Because when you watch Anthony Hopkins in this and then you watch him in like The Father, you're just like, and then you watch him in Westworld and you're just like, holy shit, this is one of the greatest.
Well, no one cares about Westworld anymore.
How fucking dare you?
But I totally agree. And I think for such a dark and horrific and confronting film, it weirdly feels very elevated in its sort of poetry of it. Like it's nothing in it is gratuitous, despite the fact that some of the imagery is so violent.
It is, but I also think it's the way it's depicted. And I mean, again, for such a like dark and disturbing, but also like you could say prestige film, it's very quotable. Like it puts the lotion on or it gets the hose again. And you know, obviously the noise I did before, and you know, the like I enjoyed his liver with a side of fava beans and a glass of Chianti. Like,
I also think in terms of like how it psychologically depicts every character, it is a better representation and understanding of, you know, a serial killer story than any serial killer story that is based on an actual serial killer.
But with that, drum roll, this is a big one. I wonder what the greatest crime movie of all time is.
Yes, big surprise.
It's obviously American History X. That's why we mentioned it before. I'm joking.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on American History X on the internet. Okay. It is The Godfather. It is, of course, The Godfather. And I
think you would have murdered me if it wasn't
we would have been
there would have been another
true crime documentary instead. Yeah. No, I think The Godfather is unequivocally my favorite movie of all time.
So stereotypical.
I know, but it's the correct answer.
What's your favorite show of all time, Rob?
The Sopranos.
Yeah, oh my God.
Okay, so...
Textbook.
Shut up. So, yeah, The Godfather is, like, as to compare to Goodfellas, like, it's not a realistic depiction of the mob or mafia, but it's a beautiful work of art.
You don't always go to the movies for realism. Like literally the reason it was and this is a big thing for me. Literally the reason the movies were invented was to escape.
Yeah.
And that is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
How effective is the escapism? And I think Godfather's fucking long, but it doesn't feel it.
It's actually impressive how much of a level up from the novel it was. Like,
which was a pulpy.
It was basically the 50 Shades of Grey of its day, right? Within that novel, Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo was able to see this parable about, you know, family and tragedy and the American dream and, you know, the moral righteousness of the soul.
It was a book that was enormous.
It was lurid.
It was lurid, and I mean, everything about it should. Even, you know, Albert Ruddy, the producer, he was like the opposite of a has-been. He was green, you know. He'd done Hogan's Heroes and not any really successful movie. Like, this shouldn't have worked as well as it did.
It was a nightmare production, and it's like it turned out.
Which normally means it's going to be a nightmare movie. That's another thing. And then it just...
Yeah. And literally the only thing, in my opinion, the only thing better than The Godfather is its own sequel, The Godfather Part 2.
Well, I think a lot of people consider the second one to be better, but I know that your opinion, even though maybe technically the second one's better, you still hold the first one in higher regard.
No, I hold the second one in higher regard. I think the second one is a better film.
But don't you like the first one more? We've talked about this before.
Like, I think the second one is the best film ever made.
Yeah.
The Godfather Part 1 is my favorite movie ever made. Which is very different things.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think as well, Godfather Part 2 is often, it's insane that a sequel, for again, a movie that many would say didn't need a sequel. Like, it was fine as it is, but it somehow managed to do better and really, I think, just like take Robert De Niro to that next level. And that's another point. Al Pacino, ain't nobody wanted him to be in The Godfather. Everyone thought
they didn't think he was a leading man.
Completely wrong. And now he's Al Pacino. Yeah. Like, it's insane to me that no one thought he'd be a leading man.
The key to, like, The Godfather working as well as it does is it really gets into the depths of how committing acts of villainy and crime just eradicate your soul.
So with that was our 10.
That was our 10.
We did it.
We did it.
So, to recap, we got Pulp Fiction, Catch Me If You Can, Knives Out, No Country for Old Men, The Departed, Promising Young Woman, Sicario, Goodfellas, Silence of the Lambs, and at our number one, ding, 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 is, of course, The Godfather as the best crime movie ever made right now.
It will remain
right
so.
Now. Well,
it will remain so.
There's a lot of time left in the world.
Well, I mean, depends who you ask.
We'll see. Yeah, that's true. But with that, like we mentioned, there were quite a few left out.
Here they are.
Here they are. Rob's going to put them all up. American History X.
No,
put it up. You have to put it there.
I'm not putting American History X.
You better fucking put it there.
I'm not even.
Okay, just put a tiny one like here in the corner.
No, I'm not putting American.
One.
Look,
little tiny
I'm
one.
not commenting on my thoughts on American History X. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
You have to, because it was on my list and you'd be rude not to.
Okay, there it is.
Just a little tiny.
There it is. Yep. It's right there. You see it? And now I'm going to cover it with all of these.
Okay. And on that, we've now determined the best fantasy films of all time. We have determined the best crime films of all time. And when we return, which is the best science fiction movies of all time. And I can tell you right now, there's probably going to be an argument in that one.
Oh, this is going to take a long time to formulate this list, because we both actually like science fiction, I'd say.
A lot.
On pretty equal footing.
Yes. I, on record, consider what many consider to be the best science fiction movie of all time to not be that good. So stay tuned for that. And if you're a man, specifically my dad, and potentially also Uncle Greg, I know that it's, I think, your favorite film. I'm sorry. We'll talk about it.
See, my dad's also going to be upset with
you. It's a dad thing.
I like it. I love it.
I'm telling you, it's like a man over the age of like 40 or 50.
I'm 29.
And with that, thanks for taking a break with Clean Slate.
I will say that, like, for my own personal list, there's not enough representation of some classics, but that's all right. We've agreed to have these lists.
This is a two-man show, Rob.
Yes, and someone who watches everything and an ageist.